The night settles thick over Hampton Court Palace, veiling its ancient rooftops in a slow-moving mist. Under the weight of silence, the stone corridors stretch endlessly, untouched by time yet burdened by memory. There is a stillness here that clings to the skin, like something unseen is watching just beyond the edge of light. By day, this Tudor-era fortress welcomes thousands of visitors. Children run past manicured gardens, historians recount tales of royal grandeur, and cameras flash against the red brick towers. But when the gates close and the crowds disperse, the palace reveals its other face. The air grows colder, the footsteps echo louder. Doors creak open on their own, and the wind carries voices not heard in centuries. Inside these halls, history does not rest. The reign of King Henry VIII began and unraveled in these very rooms. Marriages were made, then destroyed. Promises were whispered beneath chandeliers, only to be silenced by the axe. Some of those silences, it seems, have never lifted. For those who remain behind after dark, the palace is more than stone and memory. It is a presence. There are those who say they have seen her, a woman in white, gliding across the Silver Stick Gallery. Others swear they heard her screams echoing through the haunted gallery, a voice so raw and desperate it shakes the soul. Staff have resigned in fear. Tourists have fled mid-tour. Paranormal investigators call this place one of the most active sites in England, but not all answers can be found in reports or recordings. Some truths are etched into the walls themselves. Tonight, we explore three of Hampton Court's most enduring spirits. Their names are known to history, their stories are soaked in royal blood, and their hauntings refuse to fade. Hampton Court Palace was never meant to be haunted. It began as a symbol of power, ambition, and divine right. Built in the early 16th century by Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, the palace was a masterpiece of opulence, designed to rival the grandeur of any royal estate in Europe. But power breeds envy. When Wolsey fell from the king's favor, he was stripped of his legacy, and the palace was claimed by Henry VIII himself. From that moment on, Hampton Court became a stage for the most turbulent years of the Tudor dynasty. Here, Henry walked beside Anne Boleyn before signing the papers that sealed her fate. In these very rooms, he courted Jane Seymour and then grieved her death just days after the birth of his only son. In the chapel, prayers were whispered beneath painted ceilings, while secret orders for executions passed hand to hand. Servants who knew too much vanished. Queens were crowned, confined, and condemned, all within the same fortress walls. Death was not a stranger to this palace. Plague outbreaks crept in through the servants' quarters. Kitchens once feeding hundreds now echo with the clatter of long silent pans. The vast Tudor kitchens, capable of preparing feasts for entire courts, became the silent witnesses of starved ambition and quiet poisonings. Beneath the splendor, betrayals simmered. Most chilling of all was the slow unraveling of Catherine Howard's final days. Accused of adultery, imprisoned within the palace, she attempted to flee through the haunted gallery to reach Henry's chapel. She was caught, dragged back screaming, and later executed. Her cries, it is said, were so filled with terror that they lingered in the air. Centuries have passed, yet the walls of Hampton Court seem unable to forget. The ground has absorbed every footstep, every final breath, every prayer muttered by those pleading for mercy. It is this convergence of privilege and punishment, love and execution, that makes the palace more than just a relic of history. It is a vessel of unfinished stories, stories that have left something behind. Richard Mayhew has worked at Hampton Court Palace for over 2 decades. As a senior night warden, he has walked every hallway, locked every gate, and learned to trust his instincts when something feels wrong. He speaks with the steady voice of a man who doesn't scare easily. But even Richard has seen things here that unsettle him to this day. It was around 2:45 in the morning, he recalls. I was doing a final round through the east wing when I noticed the temperature drop. Not just cold, my breath fogged up in front of me. His patrol had taken him past the Silver Stick Gallery, one of the quieter corridors at night, known for its ornate ceiling and long windows that look out onto the inner courtyard. That night, the windows showed nothing but blackness, and the silence pressed against him like weight. As he stepped into the gallery, Richard froze. Just ahead, a woman stood near the far end of the hall. She was dressed in pale fabric that shimmered faintly, though there was no light to catch. Her figure was still, her face turned down. She wasn't solid, Richard says. It was like looking at smoke that had learned to hold its shape. In her arms, she seemed to cradle something, and as he watched, the shape of her body shifted, as if she were gently rocking it. I wanted to speak, he says, but my throat closed up. It wasn't fear. It was grief, heavy, suffocating, like I was mourning someone I had never met. The figure never turned, never moved beyond that gentle motion. Richard blinked and she was gone. The corridor was empty again. Since that night, Richard avoids the Silver Stick Gallery on late rounds. Other staff have shared similar stories in hushed tones, seeing a woman near the gallery at night, hearing soft humming when no one is nearby. One young guard left his post mid-shift and never returned. I don't know what she wants, Richard says, but I don't think she knows she's gone. That's what makes it worse. She's still waiting, still holding on. They call her the Pale Queen. Jane Seymour, third wife of Henry VIII, is remembered as the only one of his queens to give him a male heir. But history often forgets the cost of that legacy. Jane died at Hampton Court in 1537, just 12 days after giving birth to Edward VI. Her death was quiet, dignified, and swift. But those who believe in ghosts say her soul never left the room where she last held her son. She is seen most often in the Silver Stick Gallery, a long corridor lined with centuries-old paneling and portraits that seem to watch. Witnesses describe her as a slender woman in a pale gown, her face soft and sorrowful, her arms wrapped around something invisible. Sometimes she walks slowly, as if searching. Other times she simply stands, still and silent, facing the courtyard as though awaiting someone who will never come. The first recorded sighting was documented by palace staff in the late 1800s, when a housemaid reported a white woman in the gallery who vanished through a locked door. Since then, dozens of similar accounts have surfaced, many describing the same details: cold air, overwhelming sadness, and the presence of someone mourning. In one particularly chilling incident, a group of school children on a guided tour became agitated as they passed through the gallery. Several began crying uncontrollably. When asked what had happened, one child pointed toward the far wall and said, "She lost her baby." Electronic voice phenomena have been attempted in the gallery by independent investigators, but nothing conclusive has been captured. What has been recorded, however, is a faint female voice humming what appears to be a lullaby. The audio was examined by sound analysts, who found no logical source. Some believe the song is Tudor in origin, sung by a mother who never got to see her child grow. Those who encounter her speak not of terror, but of deep sorrow. Jane Seymour's ghost does not cry out, does not reach or threaten. She waits. And in that waiting, there is something far more haunting than rage. There is a love that never found its end. In the summer of 2022, Hannah Lewis, a 19-year-old university student from Birmingham, visited Hampton Court Palace with her family. It was a warm afternoon, the sun casting long shadows through the palace windows. Hannah had always loved history, especially the Tudor era, and had begged to stop at the haunted gallery before they left for the day. She expected cold air and creaky floors, nothing more. What she experienced instead left her shaken to the core. They entered the gallery just after 4 p.m. The long hall, with its polished wooden floor and high-arched ceiling, was nearly empty. As Hannah walked ahead of the group, she felt something shift. The air, moments before thick with summer warmth, grew icy against her arms. Her skin prickled. She paused and looked over her shoulder, but her family was still several steps behind. That was when she heard its heels striking the floor at a full run, coming fast behind her. Instinctively, she turned to the side, expecting someone to barrel into her, but there was no one there. "I thought maybe it was another tourist," she said later, but the hallway was completely empty. Then I heard the scream. It was high-pitched, panicked. I can still hear it in my head. It sounded like someone was begging. Hannah froze. Her legs locked. She described the sound as rushing past her from behind, like a wind carrying despair. A cold pressure clutched her wrist, and she gasped aloud, feeling something close around its fingers, unmistakably human. Her mother, witnessing her daughter's expression change, rushed forward just as Hannah stumbled to the ground. They left the gallery immediately. Later that evening, the faint imprint of fingers was still visible on her wrist, red and bruised. Doctors found no physical explanation. Hannah has not returned to Hampton Court. She has stopped watching documentaries about the Tudors. Her voice trembles when she describes what she felt. "It wasn't someone trying to hurt me," she says. "It was someone trying to escape, and I was in her way." To this day, Hannah avoids long hallways and refuses to be alone in silent rooms. Locals around Hampton Court speak of a belief that stretches back to the reign of the Tudors, a superstition passed down in whispers. They say that when a soul dies unjustly on consecrated ground, it becomes unburied in spirit, trapped in the space between peace and punishment. These spirits, bound not by choice but by the violence of their endings, remain where their final breath was taken, reliving their final moments again and again. Margaret Dane, a psychic investigator who has studied Hampton Court for over 15 years, believes that the palace itself was constructed in a way that holds energy in place. Tudor architecture wasn't just decorative, she says. It was symbolic. Every chamber, every gallery, follows lines of symmetry designed to command authority. But if you trace those same patterns with a dowser's rod, they also trap something else: emotional residue, spiritual weight. Dane has walked the haunted gallery multiple times, and each time she returns with the same conclusion. This isn't a place where spirits visit. This is a place where they live. She describes the atmosphere there as dense and electric, as if the walls themselves remember. Her instruments routinely register spikes in electromagnetic fields, particularly during late afternoon hours, the exact time Catherine Howard was known to pace that very corridor, pleading for her life. Among longtime residents in nearby Kingston, there are older stories. Some say a secret chapel beneath the palace was used for rituals of repentance, where the condemned begged for divine mercy before death. Others believe Henry VIII ordered a spiritual sealing of the palace after Jane Seymour's death, hoping to prevent her sorrow from turning into something restless. Yet nothing has held. The stories persist, the sightings continue, and whatever lingers within Hampton Court seems unwilling to let go. He is known only by those who have seen him, the Hooded Confessor, a silent figure cloaked in black, his face obscured beneath a heavy cowl, standing in stillness where no one should be. Unlike the other spirits of Hampton Court, his name is not found in history books. There are no portraits, no formal records, but those who encounter him speak of a presence that feels far more human than ghostly and far more watchful. It is believed he was once a servant of Thomas Cromwell, perhaps a spy or informant, used to gather secrets and extract confessions during the volatile years of Henry's shifting alliances. Some speculate he played a role in the downfall of both Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, a man tasked with collecting betrayal, then betrayed himself, his identity erased after he outlived his usefulness. He is seen most often near the council chamber, where decisions of life and death were once made behind closed doors. Witnesses describe him as still, unmoving, pressed into the shadows as if listening. He never speaks. He never moves. Yet those who pass by report hearing their names whispered, sometimes faintly, sometimes directly behind their ear. The voice, they say, is not threatening, but it carries a weight that lingers long after it fades. In 2019, a historian researching Tudor court records encountered the figure in a narrow corridor leading to the lower archives. She felt something behind her and turned to find a man standing silently in the corner, dressed in dark robes. When she looked again, he was gone. Later, during a playback of her recording device, her name was captured being whispered 3 times in succession. No one else had been present. Staff have complained of nausea in that wing, of sudden headaches and a sense of dread. Cameras fail, lights flicker. He appears during moments of decision, moments of hesitation, as if waiting for a confession that never comes. The Hooded Confessor is not angry. He is not sad. He is patient. And those who meet his gaze often feel they are being judged not by a ghost, but by history itself. In February 2023, a professional team from the South London Paranormal Society was granted limited after-hours access to Hampton Court Palace. Their objective was simple: deploy new thermal imaging equipment and document any unexplained phenomena. The group had conducted over 200 investigations across England, but none had prepared them for what they would record in the chapel hallway. Just past 1 a.m., as the team reviewed thermal footage from a fixed camera positioned near the chapel royal entrance, one of the researchers paused the playback. For nearly 18 seconds, a human-shaped heat signature appeared in the frame, standing motionless just outside the chapel door. There were no footsteps, no sound, no entry or exit. One frame showed the figure beginning to turn, as though glancing back down the hallway. Then it vanished. The equipment had not malfunctioned. The timestamp was intact. Ambient temperature remained unchanged. A second camera, facing the opposite end of the hallway, recorded nothing, suggesting the figure existed only within a specific line of sight. Simultaneously, an audio recorder placed nearby captured the faint toll of bells. Not loud or rhythmic, but distant and disjointed, as if echoing from another time. Layered beneath the sound was a single phrase, nearly inaudible, a voice saying, "He is not ready." It was repeated once more before silence resumed. Sarah Milburn, lead investigator for the team, admitted afterward that this incident changed her views on residual hauntings. What we saw wasn't residual. It was aware. It was waiting. She described a feeling that settled over the team after the recording, a thick, oppressive silence that made the air feel heavier. One member of the crew became physically ill and had to be escorted out. Another refused to enter that wing again. The footage was reviewed by independent analysts and has not been debunked. It remains one of the clearest unexplained thermal captures from a royal property in recent years. Whatever was seen outside the chapel that night had form, intention, and presence. It was not there by accident, and it was not alone. Today, Hampton Court Palace stands as both a historical treasure and an uneasy monument to the dead. Visitors stroll the manicured gardens and gaze at the gold-trimmed ceilings, unaware of how carefully some areas are managed behind the scenes. To the public, the palace appears preserved and serene. But to those who work here, especially after dark, it is anything but restful. Certain rooms are now off-limits during evening tours. The Silver Stick Gallery is routinely avoided after sundown by staff. The Haunted Gallery, while open by day, is locked promptly each night. Security guards are never assigned alone in that section. The rule is simple: no one walks it without a second witness. Several former employees have quietly left their posts, citing reasons ranging from persistent unease to unexplainable experiences. One maintenance worker reportedly quit after hearing his own name whispered through a locked door. Another refused to return after seeing a pale woman glide across a hallway, her dress stirring air that no one else felt. Electronics misbehave with increasing frequency. Tour guides have complained of drained batteries, corrupted audio files, and headsets that pick up voices not speaking on any channel. Renovation crews tasked with restoring lesser-known wings of the palace report tools going missing and unexplained cold zones. One plasterer, working alone in an older corridor, described the sensation of someone breathing at the back of his neck for nearly a minute, though no one else was nearby. What seems consistent is this: the more that is unearthed, the more restless the palace becomes. Historical investigations into sealed chambers and forgotten records have coincided with spikes in reported activity. As if, in pulling back the veil of time, something else is being stirred awake. Those who know the palace best say it with a hushed certainty. The past here is not buried, it is watching, and it does not like to be disturbed. There are places where history is remembered through plaques and preserved stone. Then there are places like Hampton Court Palace where history lives on in breathless silence, in unseen footsteps, in rooms that never quite warm. Within these walls, power once reigned without mercy, and the echoes of that reign still ripple across the centuries. The spirits here are not merely remnants of folklore. They are traces of real lives undone by ambition, betrayal, and loss. Jane Seymour's sorrow clings to the gallery where she waits with arms that remember the weight of a son. Catherine Howard's final cries still press against the air, refusing to be silenced by time. The Hooded Confessor lingers where decisions ended lives, as if judgment still lingers in the shadows. Perhaps it is not punishment that binds them, but memory. Perhaps places like this do not forget because they were never meant to. Every stone laid, every doorway carved, every corridor lined with portraits, all of it built to immortalize rule. And yet, what remains clearest are not the triumphs, but the regrets. We are left to ask, what if some places are not haunted in the traditional sense? What if they are remembering, holding on to pain so deeply embedded that it takes form, takes voice, and refuses to be erased? If you've walked these halls and felt something you could not explain, you are not alone. The palace does not give up its secrets easily, but it does speak to those willing to listen. For more true accounts of haunted history, subscribe to this channel. If you visited Hampton Court and experienced something strange, share your story in the comments below. Some tales, once told, give peace. Others, they wake the past all over again. Be careful which ones you carry home,